You mean to tell me my mic's been muted this whole entire time? Oh, gotta love having about, I don't know, what, 5 minutes worth of silence at the beginning of a stream. Love it. Really do. Really, really do. Anyways, while we're getting things going here, hope you all are doing well. Decent, all things considered. Migraine this morning, which sucked. Then we'll say this. We are going to be doing some children's reading today. I forgot to read. Well, I didn't forget to read so much as it just opened up all the other documents. Sick. It's like really good. So I need to go and open Chronicles. Where is book? Alright, so we need to erase this forward prologue. Gotta reformat some of this stuff too, but we'll reformat it in the master document because this has been rewritten. Now go to the forward chapter. Okay. Copy. Go. And I need to go up to. Actually, before we just let this song play for the entire time, go ahead and do some format editing real quick. Do kind of find it funny how I have a moment here where it's like, it's time to unleash Starfell, and he does fuck all with it. Welcome back, chat. Welcome back, everybody. Hope you all are doing well today. I do not have Spotify up yet. I'm gonna get that going here real quick. Hopefully it doesn't do like a weird formatting. I wish there was a way to like. Sure. Okay, so I need to. Any player? Minus this. We did this right. There we go. Ta-da! Kinda did it right. So, where we left off last, we had just finished reading through the forward and prologue of the Arcane Chronicles. You're now going to read through. Excuse me. I'm going to read through chapter chapter 1 through 3. Trying to precisely. All right. Hope you all are doing well today. I'm going to give it a few minutes before we actually start reading because I want to do some housekeeping here real quick. So my back still hurts, which is unfortunate. What we're going to be doing, though, is I'm going to be kind of streaming at odd times throughout this week, mostly because of... Mostly because I don't really have a good way to guarantee how this week is going to go for me. I'm going to be trying to snag some overtime at work this week, which may push me into working into the afternoon versus the morning. So the thinking is we'll just kind of go through, do a stream as we can throughout the week. We probably will be focusing on a lot of reading and writing. The hope is, depending on how things go, we might squeeze a gaming stream in there, maybe some Monster Hunter, maybe doing like some of the campaign remix, get some of the skulls we need to get. We'll see though for that. This is also August, which is a pretty cool month for people who happen to be Bionicle fans. I will not be able to go live on the 10th, so we're going to be doing... The hope is we can do like a Bionicle stream of some sort before then. Maybe Sunday or that Saturday, do a Bionicle build stream. I got a set I really want to build. So building that, I might be going over my Takanuva mock. The Metronui Mark Takanuva I've talked about in the past and showed off on stream. I've done some updates to them. So my thinking is for either the 9th or the 8th, depending on how things go, we will be doing a stream where I go over how I built the Takanuva mock, showing off the things on it that I'm really proud of, things that I really like how they look on the set design, and some of the features that it gave it. Other than that, we'll probably also end up building Emu the Mask Maker, the set with him and Skull Grinder, I think is what the villain was. So we'll be doing that on stream. I crave making food now. That's understandable, Limes. That is understandable. Making food is a really, really fun thing to do. I am a big proponent of making food. Plus, like, once you learn how to cook and do dish making for yourself, the desire to do it more just increases, you know? But speaking of things increasing, today we are going to be reading over chapters 1 through 3 of the Arcane Chronicles. I will be making edits as we go along in case something doesn't sound right or flow right in reading. Also, if we just happen to notice any grammar issues as we go through, we'll be doing that as well. I kind of want to give a few minutes, do some go-overings before we get going. So, August, it's the Bionicle month, for those who are not aware. The 10th of August is known as Bionicle Day. There will be a lot of Bionicle content creators doing content on that day. I wish I'd be taking part, but I gotta work, and I also have my doctor's appointment on Monday, so I won't be able to go. As you can see, it's also an odd day for me to be live anyways, because I'm normally not live on Mondays. So as I said earlier, that's probably because... It's not probably because I am live, because there's a chance that I might be taking some overtime this week. So I might miss some regular streaming time. So, but anyways, without any further ado, which is also nice though too, because as mentioned, if I do the Bionicle build stream, we get to actually go back to having the desktop cam where we get to build stuff again. I know it's been a while since we've done that, so we'll be doing that. But yeah, so today though, our main focus is we're going to be reading. We're going to be making edits as we go along. I do need to look up what DNFT stands for again, so let me do that real quick. Serious business. Yeah, we are doing some serious business today. We are reading. I get to put on my reading skills, which are admittedly not the best. Wow, that is 105 stream streak. Thank you so very much, Limes, for that. I really do appreciate you being here for all those times. I think you're the one with the most streams caught, in all honesty. Sorry, I'm not looking at the actual document. I'm trying to figure out what I had ENFT stand for. I want to say it was Dawn of New First Time. We might change it to just be Dawn. Make it a little bit more easier to remember. Hello, what? How you doing today? Welcome back. It's good to see you coming here once more. Hope things are going well for you. What I'm doing today is... Yeah, I do have it backwards. It is Dawn of First New Time. Fix that in the document here. I could agree with that sentiment. I'm sorry you're not doing so well. I could be better too. Your boy here has hurt his back this morning. I also had a migraine, so it has been a lovely day for me. But I hope things get better for you. Been a minute since you've been here. Hope things have been doing not terribly, but I know you said that you're doing you've been better, so I do hope. Why did it not take me there? I hate this so much. We are going to be reading some of the Arcane Chronicles today. Yeah. All right. Now that we've actually fixed the acronym to be DFNT, on a First New Time, we actually are in good shape. I should make sure I had some. All of my stuff. Go ahead. My tummy is slightly upset. Oh, goodness. Serial 1. Turn. Episode 1. A Pale Sunlit Morning. Thursday, April 28th, 2699. Dawn of First New Time. Locale, Middle Districts, Owl's Abode. When, if not you fail, always know what you did to get there and improve. A quote from the higher echelon of doctors shared among the various medical guilds. The smell of dust and warm leather still stung his nose as he heaved air into his lungs. The young man was bouncing side to side impatiently as he worked the soles of his boxing shoes against the material of the boxing ring was in. His knuckles still hurt from the last hours spent practicing his moves on an obscenely sturdy sandbag. Excuse me. One of the greater parts of this place was its stubborn reliance on older tech when training pugilists, something Jared grew quite fond of over his time coming to this gym and fitness center. It was about an hour from closing time when he started his training with the gym's owner, a rough and rowdy man with years of experience etched into his body through various scars, pocket marks, and tattoos, glory days on his arms. A veteran of a war fought before Jared's time, and long before he was brought here to New Albany. Jared kept his eyes locked on that man's hand as he shook them free of excess dust and sweat as he waved Jared forward. Without hesitation, Jared began to push forward, pushing directly towards his target with reckless abandon. Clearly a strategy not employed by him before, given the surprise grunt his trainer made as the young man closed the gap. This swung out as a voice echoed through Jared's mind with each move he made. A good haymaker, but should have followed up with a jab. A nice parry, but would have been better to duck. Remember that it's okay to backstep. to reach. Fragments of pain burned into Jared's mind as he realized this was a dream. Him recalling his time with Ronnie as he relives his first official boxing match against his mentor of the ring. You gotta make sure when you're going all out on an opponent that you keep yourself protected yet. Jared winced in his mind as he felt that haymaker connect with his cheek, causing him to stagger backwards towards two. Causing him to stagger back towards. I feel like that needs to be back towards the ring's ropes. He caught himself and breathed heavily before going right back into the fight. He was brought down in seconds as Ronnie goes over all of Jared's mistakes, each one punctuated with a hit to Jared's body, a blow to his shoulder, a kick to his thigh, a fist to his face, and finally a heel kick to his chest. Boys know what your backup options are. Dealing with someone stronger than you. Figure out their weaknesses on the fly if you cannot figure them out before even fighting them. The veteran extends a hand down to Jared, helping him back up to his feet as the dream shifts and a cold breeze hits his face. Jared finds himself looking up towards the vile face of Reagan, Bloodsmith. This is as he questions his mentor's teaching as each hit, kick, and punch brings a flood of memories back into his mind of that night. What should I have done differently here, old man? Lime's got snacks! Let's go! It was after a brief few moments had passed of him being tossed aside from the Bloodsmith where his mind was brought back to the present day as something began to echo in his mind, a dull ring, pulsing with muffled words from a monotone voice. His alarm clock was ringing. It was time to get up and leave his dreaming questions for later. Later, being in his next moment of peace that he wished to subconsciously. Garlic chips, ooh, yum. Today is Thursday, the 20th of April. Time is 5:02 a.m. Weather is mild, cloudy, and threatening to remain overcast for the day. The voice droned on as the rugged wolfen man palmed the clock off, stretching slightly as he tugged a shirt onto his body with practiced stillness of motion. He grumbled something to himself as he threw on a pair of joggers and grabbed his watch and communicator, thumbing the pair on as he stumbled sleepily out of his room. He could have made his way out of his room into the quiet apartment, rubbed at his beard, as he didn't recall the last time he shaved it. Admittedly, he gave up on a lot of his normal keeping-yourself-looking professional habits, something his therapist would say is a sign of him not being over that night. It was something his therapist would say is a sign of him not being over that. He grumbled softly as if arguing with ghosts before he entered the bathroom. A quick face wash and application of deodorant, he gazed into it. He was still tired looking. He was still tired. Probably actually just give him his name. The postman was still tired looking. Felt like he had aged more than he should have in just a year. His hair had grown noticeably darker and more grayer. He sized himself up in the mirror. He looked himself over. He was still as much of himself as he ever was, just something was off. Dakota looked over his features in the mirror as he took off his shirt to look over the scars and wounds from it. Yep, still there, he said to the mirror as he went for the medicine cabinet beside him and grabbed up some topical ointment and bandages as he tended to the red, healing, and jagged wounds along his torso. After a few minutes of that and freshening himself back up, Dakota tucked his shirt back over his body and left that small bathroom as he continued in his. The flat was quiet. Save. I think save still works better there. The flat was quiet, save for the soft hum of power and fans whirring as fresh air was moved through the unit to keep the building relatively cool and habitable. Warm, soft light strips illuminated his walk down the hallway. The lights were only broken apart by 4 different doors. His room, the one for the bathroom he had just left, and the other for a spare room. The 4th door was shut tight and fast. His only sign of knowing Emily was still home. It was a modest place, suitable for Dakota and his adopted sister. A good home to have, even though he felt like he barely spent enough time here. As he passed out of the hallway, he looked out and over the city through a massively wide window that was tinted to keep the brightness of the ambient neon lights of the cityscape out of his apartment. The window was across the way through his living room. There wasn't too much to note of in that vast space. There wasn't much to note of in that vast space, as it was only really filled with a simple couch, a hollow screen, various gym machines that adorned the opposite wall. Dakota stood still briefly, as he was watching the bright moonlight slowly creep. Out from under the horizon through the standing silhouettes of the towers, towering spires, and skyscrapers. He did enjoy this view. Then checked to see if he had any messages come through. If he had any messages that came through, which would be that. Sleep, he quietly made his way to the flat's kitchen. The kitchen was mostly neutral colors, the kind of unassuming colors commonly associated with a rental or a temporary home. However, this apartment was made into a more permanent residence, as someone decided that yet another year of renting was not so bad. The layout of the kitchen was a short galley style, having the appliances all line one wall, spaced out with small pantries and countertops to help break them all apart. The sink was what divided the stove from the dishwasher and the refrigerator. A design choice that floored Dakota, as he never quite got used to having to go from one end of the kitchen to the other to cook dinner and bring the dirty dishes over the stove to put in the dishwasher. The kitchen was divided out from the living area by one long, simple island with bar stools lining the living room side. All simple with basic padding and back support on. Dakota scratched at the nape of his neck as he looked over the pile of random papers on the island. College courses, he said to no one listening as he continued into his kitchen proper. Where did it go? There. He said to no one listening. Courses, he said to no one listening as he continued into his kitchen properly. As he made his way around the corner of the island, he saw the hollow paper refreshed with an article about it being the first anniversary of the Night of 1,000 Stars. I didn't bother reading. Dakota shifted as his tail idly bumped into the counter besides as he began to make coffee, barely paying attention to what his hands were doing as he's still reading over the various news articles compiled onto his communicator's screen. Each one was also talking about the 1-year anniversary of the postman's greatest failure. His greatest failure. I have 1,000 stars. I feel like we need this because we just talked about that in the last paragraph. Dakota grimaced as he saw a picture of the king and the senator giving their speeches from that day. Their words still echoed through his mind. Still trying, he said softly to himself as the smell of brewing coffee was soon overpowered by the subtle smell of lilac. He knew this scent anywhere, as it was her favorite perfume to use. Good morning, Em. Sleep well? He said without turning around. A soft grunt and heavy sigh were all he heard before she sat down on the opposite side of the island from him. Emily Howell was similar in complexion to Dakota, but if anything, even more pale and fairer of skin. The only blemish the elf had was a gnarly scar that ran down her left cheek, a souvenir from the day Dakota had found her. Brought her in. She had long platinum blonde hair that had 3 dyed streaks in it. Bright, vivid streaks of cyan, light green, and yellow ran down her backs. They obscured her face, but Dakota knew she was reading that newsfeed. Her green eyes looked tiredly down onto the hollow paper as she swiped the article over, glancing through the different reports, showing up with a soft, annoyed frown. Heavy, pattering, small footsteps. Heavy pattering of small footsteps soon followed up as Dakota felt something bump into his leg. Corey was also a 1-foot-long rock gecko, clearly also wanted some breakfast or coffee or anything else. Dakota took a moment from his coffee making to fetch Corey some of his food. Out of the top shelf of the cabinet left of the refrigerator, Dakota pulled out a small metallic box. He gently reached into it and brought out a handful of bolts. Nice. Don't forget about those. Pulled out a small metallic box. He gently reached into it and brought out a handful of bolts. Dakota released the bolts. They clanked into a white glass dish with a label on it signifying to not use this bowl except for the gecko. Corey let out a happy noise that sounded more of a small hole in a tire releasing air as Dakota set the bowl down for the stony lizard. He's running low. Better get him some more soon. Can't have him eating my weight set again. Dakota teased as the tired elf grumbled softly in response. Right, coffee first, then talks. You've not changed much in the last few months, he said, half joking. He knew her college courses were getting to her, but he needed to still channel that big brother energy when and where he could. As if timed perfectly, the coffee brewer pinged. The wolven man smiled softly as he poured out a cup, passing it to Emily as she sat there. She silently sat there. You're working today, right? She asked after a small sip. Her ears often betrayed her emotion, no matter how stoic she tried to be. She wanted the answer to be no. Why was anyone's guess? She didn't seem to mind it when Dakota was on the clock normally. Something was bothering her. Yeah, I'm working here, though, at least, so I'll be around if you need me. Be around if you need me. Good. That means I'll take the public transit then. What? Why? Scared of hitting me? Nah, just can't handle the insurance bump. They chuckled softly as Dakota continued with his cup. He then began making something simple for breakfast as they continued their morning in relative silence. A soft sound of sizzling meats and eggs drowned out the other muffled noises that emitted from their communicators as they both watched and read over various articles and news feeds as they came in. Before long, the bread was toasted and served with each bit of eggs and bacon, along with a small cup of fruit, freshly chopped and served with a bowl of white yogurt. Perhaps a bit much, but Dakota wanted to make sure Emily got a good meal in. Perhaps a bit much, but Dakota wanted to make sure Emily got at least one good meal in today. With little to no ceremony, breakfast was soon eaten and the relative messes cleaned up, leaving the two siblings alone in the kitchen for a moment before Corey went to his cave in the living room. They worked together cleaning up the dishes, taking care of the coffee machine, and placing the rinse dishes into the dishwasher as Dakota called for the hollow screen to turn on and go to the news channel. Man, that would be scary if those were sticks of dynamite. Where was I? Placing the rinse dishes into the dishwasher as Dakota called for the hollow screen to turn on and go to the news channel. You're still set on that understudy with Raggist, right? Dakota asked. He was proud of in her for wanting to pursue a magic wielder license, despite his reservation to why she was wanting to get it. Yeah, you ain't kidding. We live in a regular Looney Tunes world. Emily was naturally inclined to magic given the heritage she had. was naturally blind to magic, given the heritage she had. My elf. She took the spells. Hello. No, I just need to not get a migraine while I'm already loaded up on painkillers. Hope you're doing well, though, Frank. It's good seeing you. I woke up this morning and couldn't get up out of bed. I had forgotten to take my my one set of painkillers that I'm supposed to take at night to help with my back. And because of that, when I woke up, I couldn't move, and I had a migraine. So that was fun. Yes. I don't know if Jeff would actually want to give me just a back rub, though. I fear he'll want to do something more. Did work go all right today? Didn't say, yeah, exactly. Emily was naturally inclined to magic, given her heritage. She had, oh, that's good. I'm glad everything went smooth, at least. She had mastered them faster than he did at a much younger age, but he knew that this would just serve to continue the promise made when they first found each other. They'd still make it right, but he had larger duties to do now. Dakota understood entirely why she wanted to join the Postman, but having her in this line of work was something he was not comfortable with, regardless of her skills and natural gifts. There was a point of contention between the two of them, as she felt it was best for their goals to also become affiliated with the Postman, and him thinking she should continue to go into magic crafting. Capitalize that. They both wanted justice for their missing families, for them to be found, and that part of their lives to be put to rest properly. They just had clashing ideas. However, the discussion about it wouldn't solve anything. Dakota knew he couldn't keep her from going down that path that would make her a postman. Yet, ooh, 6. Ouch. 6 is pretty low. Yeah, you gotta put in a money amount. Yet he knew she'd still be spared of everything that made him who he was, a monster. That project was shut down, long since shut down. He always told her that he became a werewolf through becoming a postman. Postman. Member of the Postman. I would never have guessed that either. 1834 does sound right. He had always told her he became a werewolf through becoming a member of the Postman. Dakota had to explain to her before she committed down that path that she'd still be normal and that it wasn't the Postman who made him this way. The memories of his time before becoming a werewolf to provide for his new family. That's actually kind of surprising, Miles. I thought you would have known. Maybe that's more of a dot thing. Know that? The memories of his time before becoming a werewolf super soldier to provide for his new family were always bittersweet to him. But being a pugilist was not enough to care for his sister too. He had to do something more, something incredibly risky, but rewarding for her, their guardian, and himself. Ironically enough, his biggest regret was the one choice he couldn't ever take back. When he joined the military guild, the Arcane Region, he wasn't where he'd ever meet the judges, or anyone with such authority. Meeting the powers that shaped and held the fragile world together and regulated so much magic changed his thinking on what the world could do and be. Too much for someone just becoming an adult. It was changed, altered, rebuilt, and after all after being torn apart completely and reforged into the being he was now. It's only off by 100 years. Yeah. Good guess, though. Reforged into the being he was now. He missed his old self, his human self, but he knew he had to sacrifice it for her and their lost families if he ever wanted to bring justice to their names. This was the way he had to do it. The judges said so themselves when they interviewed him. The trip through his mind brought him back to reality as Emily said something that made him realize this was not the first time she had asked this question to him right now. "What's up?" was all he could ask as the elf brushed her hair back as she contemplated a question she'd been meaning to ask Dakota once more. Because you're being more aware of time passing, Limes. That's why. When you're not thinking of time, it goes by quickly, but when you start thinking of the time, it goes by slowly. That's why, like, when you're at work and you're wanting to go home, the reason why it takes so long to get there is because of the fact that you're wanting it to pass. Oh, I don't want the soda to explode. I mean, what? It's only been a handful of minutes, hasn't it? Actually, get my phone out so I can see. You have put your sodas in the freezer 10 minutes ago. Yeah. Only 20 more minutes. Hello, Romulus. It's good to see you, friend. Hope you're doing well. We are reading through the chapters 1 through 3 of the Arcane Chronicles, and then maybe, if time allows, we'll go over we'll start outlining chapters 4 through 6. I'm doing all right, all things considered. My back is still hurting me, but so long as I remember to take my painkillers, I'll be all right. Jared, I really think we should talk about what I'm going to do after I'm through with my... Well, so long as you have a different idea to offer, I'm all ears. Emily hated that retort. I think it's our best that is... I think that is best bet yet. Emily hated that retort. I think that it is our best bet yet. Help us figure out what happened. You still want to keep that promise, right, Jared? Dakota hated that question. I do still want to keep that promise. We just got bigger. We just got things going on bigger than us now, he said. Still remembering that day. Remembering the first time he was someone's hero. The day he knew he made his parents proud, wherever they were. We'll find them, and those responsible for taking them away. So let me start looking into it now. Start looking into that. No, I can do it. That's why I've been taking these classes, Emily continued. Clearly, the breakfast fueled her rightly. Dakota didn't reply. You had to think of something more than just, I don't want you to get hurt. That line never seemed to work on her. If anything, it fueled her to do something he didn't want her to do. Emily pressed her advantage as he stood there thinking. It's not like you're able to tell me no. Like when we first talked about this, I'm an adult now. I don't have a job yet, but I can get one. A job isn't going to finish your schooling, though. We both know that any job available right now is definitely not going to give you the time to prepare to join the postman. A job isn't going to finish your schooling. And we both know that any job available right now is definitely not going to give you the time to prepare to join the postman. So let's talk about the skin another day when you're at least through with schooling. School, Ragus, sorry. So why is this being such a Terrible thing to read. The job isn't going to finish your schooling, though. And we both know. And we both know that any job available right now is definitely not going to give you the time to prepare to join the postman. So, let's talk about this. We both know that any job available right now is not going to give you the time to prepare to join the postman. So, let's talk about this again another day. You're at least through with school, and when Ragus is finally has finished your training. Ragus has finished your training. He's also very against postman. He's also very against joining you, postman. So, better not let him know that is why you're having him teach you. Dakota only ever lied to Emily twice when talking about the postman. Once to explain that they made him what he was, and once that Ragus didn't like him for it. In reality, he would eventually need to tell her the truth. That he was made this way by something else, the arcane region. Postman would still give her the augments and boots she needs to help on our quest for her family, but the time? Doubtful. Alright, talk about it some other time, she said softly. But only because I know you couldn't refute me this time, she added with a smug smirk. They stood there in silence for a moment before Dakota ran his hand through his hair and said, Yeah, you got me in a corner on this. I can't really control what you want to do. We're well into, he said before stretching out with a gruff yawn. But you still do pay. But I guess it doesn't like that comma there. Still do pay for rent and not charge you for it, so we're even. Whatever, I'm gonna go get ready. When do you gotta leave today? Near 7. I'll be able to freshen up more at work if needed. They don't want me wearing my uniform when not on the clock. At least when I'm on my way into work. Take me to campus? Sure. Make sure Corey is set up in your room, though. Fine. After that, not much else transpired besides Dakota gathering up his work gear and making sure he wasn't free. As he grabbed the keys, he felt his communicator buzz. He pulled it out of his pants pocket and thumbed the screen. Reading the message from his precinct's tech wizard, Quincy, he nodded. Sick. He smirked softly. His new gear was finally ready. He'd been waiting on this updated for a while now. He was tired of just running standard issue tech for the last 5 months of active service. As if she heard him, Emily was finally ready to go. What's up? As Dakota went to answer, she simply brushed him off as she opened the flat stubble door. We can talk about it on the way to campus. We gotta get going after all. The ride to the campus was relatively peaceful. Questions exchanged on the radio. The radio between show hosts filled the idle air in the Omni vehicle. All the while, Emily worked on her schoolwork. Dakota would keep his mind busy thinking of that night, still pondering what he could have done better, differently. Nothing came to mind. Dakota always forgot how massive Silverscale, the Academy of Applied Magics, was as it loomed before them. Posing gleaming walls of opal white were lined with buttresses wrapped around were lined with buttresses wrapped around the massive. I see why it's hard to read. Posing gleaming walls of opal white were lined with buttresses wrapped around the massive structure. Need a were there. Opposing gleaming walls of opal light were lined with buttresses that were wrapped around the massive structure. Tall dark spires went in a semicircle pattern around the main building that made up the college grounds. Opposing gleaming walls of opal light lined with buttresses wrapped around the massive structure. Tall dark spires went in a semicircle pattern around the main building that made up the college grounds. Great arching bulb of latticework and silver shone through the spires as different tunnels and walkways dotted an arch between each spire to the main buildings. There were 4 total buildings that made up the Academy of Applied Magics, with the centermost being the city's most notable structure. The main building was a large castle-like fortress dressed up with all the regal splendor of a library of legends. Stained glass murals shone in stark contrast to the rest of the building's pale silver colors. The stained glass murals depicted different scenes throughout the history of the college, along with the framing of how the city was brought up out of the eve of the last old time and brought into the dawn of the first new time. Magnificent banners dotted the courtyards around each building, showing off what each building had in their main educational focus. Dakota knew it was mostly for show, as most classes would be between each building on site. TheSavageED was built over 600 years ago in quick fashion by a guild that tried to often emulate the classic architecture feel in modern buildings. The higher districts were covered in buildings of this nature, all likely built from the same guild. The old world-inspired structure gleamed in the early morning light before the Omni vehicle and its passengers. Something that Dakota never quite figured out about TheSavageED was who helped the judges fund it. The judges' influence on funding would usually lead to buildings having very simplistic and minimalistic designs and being extremely pragmatic. Function over form. Realistically, it didn't matter who else funded it, as the funding was probably secured in majority through charity and taxes. But, given the history of what TheSavageED meant to the common folk, there had to be trade. He pivoted the Omni vehicle down into the main parking lot as he followed the onboard's computer guide for parking. Parking here. So structured. Was slowed to a stop. Make sure you let me know if you need anything, alright? Dakota said. Dakota said as he looked back towards Emily. Yeah, when will you be home? Probably after 8. Unless you got me on a hunt or a mission. I'll send the order list to the store for you if you get bored with schoolwork so you can go pick it up. I'm always bored of it. Yeah, I hated school too. Anyways, gotta go. Take care. See you later. Swing by for dinner if I can. Good. I don't like making dinner just for myself. I'm terrible at the portions. Same, Dakota chuckled, falling back to the first dinner as an official family. He had made way too much pasta. Hydrate. Thank you. He made way too much pasta. They were sick of noodles after the 3rd night. Hold on. With a brief exchange of words, the siblings went their separate ways for the day. Emily went off towards the campus as Dakota gently worked the Omni vehicle out of the parking lot. Went on to the postman tower. Dakota mulled on the silence and added, just thinking about Emily's desire to join the postman. We have to tell her the truth soon. Well, I think with how soon we're going to do that, I think it's going to be chapter 4 when they finally talk about postman and all that. I think that's the best time to do it. Dakota pulled the Omni vehicle into his parking spot in the underground garage. Dakota ran his hand through his hair again as the watch chirped, giving him the 5-minute warning of him being late for a shift. He grumbled about it and as he got out of his car. He looked over the machine marble He looked over the machine marvel and smiled softly, still one of the coolest rides he ever saw. The car itself was a bit sleek in nature, flared only at the back. Jet black with dark blue stripes along the top and sides with only distinguishing features on it. Windows wrapped around the front to about halfway down the sides where the rear doors would be. There were wheels would fold in. There were several groove notches. The wheels would fold in for flight mode. There were several groove notches and vents for the jets to help propel it along. Fancy bit of science and magic he could never fully understand. As he popped open the back door of the Omni vehicle, he reached into the back seat for his work duffel bag and his weapons, unlatching the set of gear from the floor as he hefted them out. Now that he was on postman grounds, he didn't need to worry about being noticed by civilians. He sighed as he worked his gear onto his shoulder and back before he left the flying car. Shoulder and back where he left the flying car. He thumbed the key twice. The vehicle chirped and locked down, letting him know that not a soul could get in there unless it was himself. With that, Dakota was at work. As he entered the postman's tower on the subfloor, Dakota checked in with security and punched 7 a.m. on time. Wolf and postman went to the locker rooms as he signed softly. Finally, time to get to work. The common area for the locker rooms was standard for people in his field, except each locker was a small private spot. Private. Each station postman to keep some other more specialized gear here. An idea he both loved and hated for an equal measure. Although thinking about it more, he wished he could just have his equipment with him the entire time. Make his life easier and allow him just do his work. Dakota waved at a fellow postman, leaving her own locker as he then opened up his own prep room. Being a super soldier, like he was, did afford him a bit more of a private space from the other postmen, as his locker was larger and had a series of other locks on it, including a genetic test. No one would be getting in unless it was him. Or so he thought. Dakota was clearly not the last person in here, as a small box and a note left on top of it told him otherwise. He glanced about before getting ready, turning on his watch fully and getting the rest of his armor on. Fully kitted out, he then took the box up carefully, checking for traps or anything on the sword as he looked it over. Deciding the box was mostly harmless on the outside, he looked over the note. Your benefactors have decided that now is the time to increase your potential. Inside will be the first of 5 upgrades you will receive with question, but no answer. Know that his gifts are only here to benefit you and help you with your overcoming of past failure. How? No. He and I will meet you shortly in a way we cannot say, but you'll know it is us. Diligent and know we are forever here for you. Before he could even comprehend what was being read, the box sprang into action, ensnaring his left wrist and hand as the sound of whirring gears and magic buzzing filled the small room. Dakota went to pry the box free, but as his hands touched the box, 3 images burned to his mind, images he had seen before. It was when he met the judges. He grew still as his mind washed over with a soft static as he felt something else change inside of him. Next thing he knew, he was standing in the center of his private prep room, eyes locked in onto the new object in his locker. A gleaming metal sword bound in a dark leather scabbard was what he saw. The scabbard was simple looking, just adorned with sigils and runes Dakota vaguely recognized, but couldn't quite recall what they meant. He saw that they had a faint glow to them, as if it was an iridescent sheen of various blues cycling with unknown power. As he sat in his locker, Dakota felt a thought softly echo in his mind. It wasn't his voice. Softly echo. It wasn't his voice that gave him the thought, and yet. Curious by the new implement award, Dakota hesitantly reached out for the blade. As if it knew his intent, the blade arose from the scabbard it was in and slowly began to move towards him. Dakota drew his hand back out of instinct as the sudden movement of the blade caught him off guard. As he did, the blade began to return to the scabbard. Seeing it do so made Dakota realize that the blade was magically attuned to his thoughts. Well, he inferred that, as he had no way of confirming that outright. He reached for the weapon again, and it came towards him, stopped just within reach of his hand. Carefully, he grabbed the blade by the hilt and sized it up. The blade itself was of a bright silver color, with sigils and runes etched into the dark gray crossguard, along with the middle of the blade that shone like the sigils on the scabbard. The sword was just over 3 feet long in blade length, with a hilt nearly a hand and a half long, wrapped in leather like the scabbard was made of. At the end of the hilt, in the pommel, there was a blue gem cut into the shape of a star that gave up a soft glow. The blade was tapered inwards, then back out from the middle after about 1.5 feet worth of the blade's length, before collapsing into the blade's tip. An odd design choice for sure. Dakota studied the sigils briefly before he gave the blade a soft swing. It felt slightly heavier than it should. As he moved the blade about, that is when he began to see that the blade's metal slowly began to glow a pale white color, filling in the tapered bit of the blade with a glowing blue energy. Dakota let the blade's haft find balance in his hand as he realized that it felt perfectly balanced now, even more odd. The postman wondered whose magic craft was added into this blade as he went to sheath it in the scabbard. Before he could even latch it shut, the scabbard lifted up out of the locker and fashioned a belt from seemingly nowhere and attached itself to his back. Bringing the belt around and integrating it into his overcoat with a soft click and clank of metal. The blade's glow died down as the scabbard sigil softly glowed brighter before dulling out. Relaxed. Dakota decided it would be best to test the sword out later, though, as he was wasting time. The wolfen postman finished gearing up and left his locker and headed back to the main floor of the postman's spire. He wasn't late yet, but taking that long to prep surely get his boss to ask what he was doing down here for so long. Dakota made his way out of the elevator. He saw the place was already bustling with other agents milling about. All gathering bounties and talking of previous missions as they were not unexpected, but he was to be in before the shift changed. Dakota slowly made his way towards the main desk, taking care not to bump into others as he went. He made small waves and greeted the other agents as he passed. Not stopping for conversation, though. Nothing out of the normal. Finally, he made it to the main desk. Dakota only paused briefly there to see what missions and hunts were available for the day. Same run-of-the-mill assignments, nothing pertaining to him. One of the clerks on hand perked up after looking up from her computer with a soft gasp. Dakota! Wasn't expecting you to come here first, especially after what the boss told us. Yeah? What did he say? That a representative of the judges would be talking to you before you got here. He said not to mark you as late. I'm not late, am I? About 15 minutes late now. Did your watch out of sync again? Guess the update made me lose track of time, Dakota said softly, looking into his watch as it was 15 minutes later than what he thought it was. Odd. That explains why the main floor was bustling. Hope you don't mind. My bad. What did they want? The clerk asked as she lowered her monocle to look at Dakota directly and seemingly off record. absent-mindedly replied. The judge's representatives, did they talk to you? Talk is a strong word. See, they gave you something. Change your watch. Talk is a strong word. Dakota answered shortly. Say they gave you something and changed your watch. Yeah, I haven't had time to see what all was upgraded. Is Quincy still in? Yes, she replied, brushing the dark brunette hair out of the weight of her face. There was something familiar about this clerk. Dakota knew he saw her outside of work, which isn't something that is meant to happen. Postman agencies try to keep agents and other roles from interacting with each other off the clock, as it could lead to favoritism, them getting jobs that paid more than what was typically offered to each agent. He's been waiting for you in D&R. Seems very excited, more so than usual. Guess you really gave him something fun to figure out this time, she said, adjusting her monocle back over her eye. She looked back at Dakota with a soft smile. Nothing Dakota struggled with. He was still in a league of his own in comparison to the other agents here. Favoritism was nothing that Dakota struggled with. Still in a league of his own in comparison to the other agents here. He was a higher rank and had some favor yet with his boss. Favor that was waning thanks to his fervent search searching for Reagan. I don't know if I like search there. Favor that was waning thanks to his fervent search. Favor that was waning thanks to Dakota's fervent search for Reagan. Yeah, I need to thank him. I needed him to upgrade my pistol. As the standard issued ones aren't cutting it right. Dakota hefted up his duffel bag, his rifle latch safely inside. And he wants me to trade in this for my new rifle. Rare times when I get a full new kit, he added with a smirk. Good, you're gonna need to be at top shape. Dakota looked at the clerk with a slightly confused look as he tilted his head to the side. That wasn't what her lips said. He said something else. Dakota stared at her for a moment before he realized that everything else had stopped around him. He looked about in confusion as he tried to piece together what was going on. He saw her, the shaper of death herself, Eerie. Now, I know what they wanted, she spoke into his mind, directly implanting her thoughts and words into his skull as she showed him into her. I see the judges upgraded your arsenal. Also helped Quincy with your request. Poor soul. He's nervous now. This only ever happened one other time. That time was before the debriefing they gave on that. She showed him all he missed from her fight with Reagan, along with her perspective of the fight he had with that vampire. She had said she wanted him to get their story straight. It could have happened 1,000 other times. Still never get over the uneasy and dreaded sensation that flooded his mind as she welcomed her palace. It was a dark place, a slab of obsidian and granite that was surrounded by hundreds of screens that were flickering between everything going on around them. Eerie sat in the middle of the room, in an oversized chair, drinking from an antique mug as a smell of coffee seeped into Dakota's mind. Yeah? It's good at least. What do you want? I want some proper respect and all. I can't always be there to save your bacon. I have been doing fine, you know. Have you? The question was very cold. But Dakota knew why she took the time to talk to him. She needed him to be back into fighting shape. Better fighting shape. There's a lead. Eerie wasn't one to waste time unless it was something very important to her, like finishing something she left undone. The death of the Bloodsmith was what this was all about. Finally, yes, it seems our problem has found footing and is about to strike, she said, getting up from her chair as the metallic sphere grabbed the mug and set it down gently on the table next to her chair. He has been hiding and lying obscenely low for someone of his power, she continued, showing Dakota flashing images of the screen of all her attempts to find him, any sort of lead she could scour. Seems he took to robbing a blood blank shortly after his run with us. Shame they had us on lockdown then. Shame they had us on lockdown then. Gross. One of your AI bot viewers. I'm quite content with my size right now. Anyways, where was I? He's been hiding and lying obscenely low for someone of his power, she continued, showing Dakota flashing images on screens, or attempts to find him, and any sort of leads she could scour. Seems he took to robbing a blood blank shortly after his run with us. Shame they had us on lockdown then. Could have finished the job while he was weak. Her face was obscured, but Dakota knew she was smiling in the darkness, not a happy smile. Dakota knew better than to interrupt, but he had to ask how she knew this. As if he said something, she continued. Dakota knew better than to interrupt. As if she knew his question, she continued. I know this because I saw the reports after the event. They didn't tell us. Someone is helping him on the inside? Possibly, but I doubt, she said before suddenly being beside Dakota, holding out his sword. Oh, welcome back. She talked to the blade as if it was an old friend from yesteryear before putting it back into the scabbard. No, not the soda! You can't spill that! No! No! I'm sorry for your loss, Sterling. Do not pull your head schmoove off. There are several people who still have need of you. Much as you would want to pull your stuff schmoove off. Not allowed. Not yet. I think that's one of my favorite things to tell people is like, I still have need of you yet. Makes me sound so much more ominous. Sorry, I need to adjust something quick. Stand to do this, hold on. Yeah, my model's broke because I'm trying to adjust something. I had accidentally bumped my mic, and now the Velcro that I have that holds on wire. Model's gonna break. Camera, I'm right here. Odd how it has the type. gonna let me re-velcro this so I had it. Son of a gun. I'll have to do for now. I'll get a twisty tie layer on that. Some bit. Ugh. Alright, where was I? Possibly, but I doubt. Possibly, but I doubt. Romulus! But I doubt, she said before suddenly being beside Dakota, holding out his sword. Oh, welcome back. She talked to the blade as if it was an old friend from yesteryear before putting it back into the scabbard. A great weapon, powerful. Odd that they'd let you have it. He said with a tone that sounded like happiness. That weapon has slayed vampires before. Do you a great service in dealing with that edgelord. Thanks. But what else? Don't just invite me in here. Don't just invite me here often. That watch upgrade you got, it'll let your powers last longer, she added. And think of it like recharging doubly and taking a quarter of the power to run spells nice. Think of it like make your powers last longer and made them stronger too. Yeah, then think of it like being recharged doubly and taking a quarter of the power to run your spells. Nice, that is word for it, but also do note. The screens flickered off, save for one. The screen was focused on Emily at school. I know what she is after too. She'll get what she seeks after you try to tell her no more. Save yourself the frustration and talk to her, okay? Anything else? Dakota asked, getting slightly annoyed at how she was talking to him. Yeah, one more thing. The sky goes green for a leaf that is amber. Keep that in mind, will you? The what? Rare times indeed, the clerk finally replied properly. It seemed Eerie was done talking to him. He blinked, realizing that nothing else had happened while he was talking to her. That magic she had was something else. Alright, well, better be going. Better get going. Send me my usual hunts to my commune. I'll go on them once I'm done with Quincy. Oh, before you leave, boss wants to talk to you about something. You want to say what, but we think it's for what today is, the clerk said with a nervous tone. Yeah, seems about right. Talk with him later. Postman delivered justice. Postman delivered justice, she said with a smile, as we shall. Hippets! Dakota kept in mind what Eerie said to him as he walked down to the wide hallway. The woven postman always found this walk to seem a lot shorter than it should have been, considering the scale of the spire he was in. As he walked on, her words rattled on in his head as he kept also thinking about his current upgrades. He got amused about if he should let Quincy see them as well. As he thought on, Dakota found his way to the back half of the many-floored spire, just outside the Development and Research Department. This place was where a small crew of dedicated developers, magic users, and weaponsmiths all worked together with a forge master to craft the various magical equipment and technologies that each postman assigned to the city had. ENR apartment was massive. An open floor shop with partitions dividing each area apart, being safe. The department had a fully fledged firing range that led outside towards the back floor. A small foundry where many of the armor plates and weapons were forged at, a smithery that perfected each crafted weapon and armor piece, a lab that would test and create many of the healing elixirs and other various potions used by the postman, an alchemy suite set up that was used for creating and improving the many materials it took to make up the postman's gear. Made up more than half of the main floor of the postman's spire in New Albany. Forge Master Quincy was one of the most senior in this department, probably even across all postmen and our branches. The tech wizard, having been part of the, well, Forge Master, Tech Wizard Quincy, was one of the most senior in this department. Possibly having been part of the postman well before Dakota joined. Quincy oversaw many of the technological and magical advancements made by the agency. So much so that rumors even went on about how he was related to one of the judges, all because his gift of mixing magic and science. The half-dwarf Forge Master was able to accomplish nearly anything, so it was a point of pride for Dakota to know his ideas often challenged him. Unlike the other people working back here, who often encouraged their charges to adapt and alter their tools to fit their needs, Quincy was not one of those types. The stocky half-dwarf go on about how he hated it when the postman messed with his perfectly crafted and forged gear, and even loathed it more when those who altered his work were returned weeks later with their gear being broken from misuse. Dakota was often the one who would push the master craftsman to his limits as he pushed the gear to the very limits of their purpose. Rifles were often battered, pistols bent, armor rendered useless, etching spells shaved clean from use. Dakota tested Quincy's patience. Once inside the department, Dakota was nearly instantly greeted by Quincy's owl. The dark brown and gray Stygigrade how it said. Stygigrade owl hooted at Dakota in a frustrated tone, clearly knowing it was his fault why his owner was in a flustered state. Dakota smiled up at the bird. Hey, Howard, missed you too, buddy. Soft fluttering of its wings, the ornery bird turned away from Dakota with a little more fanfare and stayed by the main entrance. Dakota, satisfied with the brief engagement, continued further into the department, greeting other tech wizards and workers as he went further in, heading towards where the Forge Master had his own shop set up. You know, Dakota said as he entered the half-dwarf's portion of the department, I hadn't seen myself. I wouldn't have believed you were so riled up. Even Howard had to let me know. Oh, that blasted bird was supposed to tell me when you got here. Now, try your old rifle, yeah? Yes, I did. I heard one of the reps from the judges even stopped by to give you pointers, he answered, opening up his duffel bag to retrieve the armament out of its sling. Dakota handed the implement of war to the white-haired and half-dwarf. Skin. Fat lot of good that did. Told me to do all you wanted to and more, ornery oaf. Ornery oaf. Can't believe she even wanted you to have 2 pistols on. Why 2? Isn't 1 enough? I'm not complaining. Yeah, because you ain't... yeah, because you ain't the one making them. The Forge Master hefted up a small black box, latched with 3 different straps and covered in a set of blue sigils, very similar to his sword's scabbard. Got me there. Did she say anything else? Go to size up the small gun case. Got me there. Did she say anything else? Dakota sized up the small gun case before opening it. Only that they needed to transform into melee weapons. Hope you like hatchets, she said, taking apart the rifle in moments before Dakota could even finish opening up the gun case. Hatchets? Dakota asked. Seems like an odd choice. Yeah. Well, they gave you that silly sword already. She told me that much. Feel that you're annoyed at being told what to do. You can tell that much, yeah? Dakota chuckled softly as he carefully hefted up the black firearms from the box. It was firearms from still very much. Pistols were still very much styled like the standard issued sidearms that the postman had, except the weapons were noticeably larger and had a set of notches along the other side of the frame. It's beyond the trigger guards. Making them into a hatchet is easy enough. Just slide the groove there in those notches and the shaping magical dust, as he said as he worked up each part of the disassembled rifle onto different slots on a large metal. The metal slowly began to glow as the half-dwarf hefted the frame onto the cart beside him. They also now take vocal commands for spell damage types you want for your rounds. Lumi for right, Nocta for dark, Ignis for flame, Volta for lightning. I think you get the picture. The Ford Master wheeled the cart, waving Dakota to follow him. Dakota quickly put the firearms into their case, he said into the duffel. I changed them back into pistols. Rivets in the axe said, just grab and pull. Dakota said, following Quincy as they passed a pair of workers with two other postmen, idly talking about their gear as Quincy handed Dakota a pair of welding guns. Dakota put them on without question as Quincy hefted the metal frame off the cart onto a conveyor belt before leading Dakota into the grand furnaces section of the department. Now for your rifle. We're going to keep it simple, really. Nothing too fancy. Just better capabilities for you. It's a shame. You want to transform too? No, Alright then, let me talk. Forge Master said before having Dakota sit down on a chair in the room, having him watch as Quincy reforged his rifle. Or upping your firepower, making it have a large or magical clip capacity, along with being more accurate. It'll fire straight as can be at a fire rate you deem worthy for the engagement. Dakota scratched his chin. He watched the frame holding the various parts of his old rifle begin to heat it to the point of liquefying and reverting to the state of what the rifle was before being turned into a weapon. For all potential. Forge Master grabbed up a new frame and set it on the side before heaving it into the runes, allowing it to accept the liquid, then cast it into a slab to be reused for another thing later on. Quincy then hefted up a gun case from the underside of the table and rotated towards Dakota as he opened it up, showing off his new rifle as the postman got up from his chair and came with the weapon. It's beautiful, Dakota said as he studied the sigils and runes etched into the rifle before reaching for it. Before he could grab it, Quincy shut the case and took it into his hands before waving Dakota out, back to his main room. Now, to be fair with you, we already had this in the works before that rep showed up. Figured you'd be needing the upgrade, as you already talked about your pistol being changed. Figured you'd be needing the upgrades, as you already talked about your pistol needing to be changed. Quincy handed over the gun case to Dakota. Handed over the gun case as Dakota set it down onto Quincy's table before getting the rifle and placing it into his duffel bag. You'll need to make sure you stock up on the enchanted steel plates for both your pistols. They won't take standards anymore. Gotta run with the high grade stuff. Normal grade plates will still work. Will normal grade plates still work? Yeah, but you won't get the spells to work for the ammo types if you do. Fair enough. Anything else, Quincy? Yeah, do me a favor. Don't be asking for a repair soon. I'm on a tight schedule this week. Boss wants me to make something special for him, he said with a slight head tilt, egging Dakota on to ask something else. Dakota took a hit and shrugged. Alright, well, you want to see this silly sword? Yeah, I know the blade. Light of Stars. There's a pause in his voice, recalling the history of the blade. Starfall. That's what we called it back in its prime. It was made by my great-granddad. What? Yeah, he made it back when we had to deal with a vampire lord. It's beyond good at dealing with the supernatural. He made that blade back when we had to deal with a true vampire lord terrorizing people, before it had firearms capable of doing it. The half-dwarf paused, running his hand down his white beard, thinking for a moment. It's only silly to me because if you're the one being sent to deal with that monster, you shouldn't need this. You got guns capable of handling vampires, Quincy hinted, revealing he knew more than Dakota about what today had in store for him. Dakota said nothing more, but nodded softly. Maybe the rumors were true about Quincy. Maybe he was related to one of the judges. With nothing left to discuss or go over, Dakota bid Quincy a good day and took his upgraded equipment with him, stepping only to get the special high-grade plates on his way out of the DNR department. Before leaving fully, Dakota would look back over his shoulder to see if Quincy was keeping an eye on him or not. The half-dwarf adjusted his goggles on his forehead and solemnly shook his head. Normally, he'd linger back here to fire off his weapons at the range a bit, get a feel for them. But he was already running later than what he wanted and knew he had to talk to his boss before beginning his patrols. As the wolf and postman left, Howard swooped back to Quincy's shoulder and fluttered his wings. Dakota waved back to the two as Quincy sighed. The Forge Master closed the main door to his room and went to his desk, finding a bottle of amber liquid and retrieving a glass and gingerly pouring a cup. Those monsters at the Arcane region started something they never should have, he said softly to Howard as he sipped from the glass. Hopefully that kid's heart is still strong enough not to succumb. The elevator hummed softly as Dakota leaned up against one of the walls. He didn't need to take this way up to the boss's office, but it felt right to come through the comms wing and see if anyone had any information on possible sightings of Reagan. The cursed vampire was still haunting his mind as he mulled over why he was given such a blade to put the monster down. Surely any other holy spell would suffice, or at the very least, blessed munitions. Why such a specific weapon? What Quincy said to him still hung in his mind, given what he knew from first-hand experiences with the Arcane region. Dakota pushed that thought aside. Surely those mad scientists wouldn't have made Reagan into a genetic splice of that vampire lord, right? How would they even kept the body intact for so long to do so? Questions for later. For all these were. Questions for earlier were all that these questions were. He could have fidgeted with the new sling he had gotten for his room. The dark brown strap of leather and metal softly dug into his shoulder. The dull sensation reminded him that he did nearly lose his arm then. Still, he was satisfied with how secure his rifle was. Then checked on the holster straps for his pistols as they clung to the sides of his thighs. Just under his overcoat, the dark blue coat moved out of his way as he checked the safety fasteners on the holsters for any defects or anything of concern. He double-checked his sword scabbard. The blade was there, silent and locked in safely. Before much longer, the Wolven postman would hear the faint chime of the elevator along with the verbal chirp of communications, notifying of the fact that he made it to the comms wing of the spire. Typically, he wouldn't be out and about fully geared up like this, especially still in the tower. He needed to show his boss and the dispatching crew that he was ready for his next assignment. He slowly got up off the wall as he strode forward into the dark room. The elevator doors slid silently shut as hushed voices and various computer noises began to draw Dakota's attention. The walls were lined with massive decks of spinning computer disks and cassettes that recorded and processed all the information ebbing and flowing out of this dark room. It was as if this room was just a massive computer that everyone was just a working part of. He strode down the main walkway between the different operating stations as each clerk focused on their task at hand, only pausing briefly if they noticed Dakota glancing down towards them as he walked on. Nothing too major seemed to be happening at this moment. Even as each agent here divvied out different alerts on communications to each other, each on patrol postman. Postman on patrol. Once his short walk was finished, he glanced down towards his watch. The time was 7:45 and he sat out softly and told himself he'd be better at managing time. For today, he hadn't beaten himself over it. He could have finally made it to his boss's office as imposingly tall brass double doors were just beyond a desk with a lone secretary. working over a keyboard with quiet dedication. Dakota waited for her to acknowledge him, only to see her raise a hand and motion him. It seemed she was expected still. Walking past her desk, Dakota then nodded and adjusted his coat, preparing himself for whatever was about to be unleashed against him from his boss. With a soft pause as he stopped before the doors, Dakota then rapped his knuckles on the double brass-coated doors. With a soft sound, the doors gently swung open into the The wolf and postman always forgot about how many other people were typically stationed inside along with us. He paused, looking out the massive view over the cityscape. Dakota began watching the sunrise higher into the sky over New Albany. His boss would notice him, glancing up from my college desks. Colleague's desk. Is that supposed to be colleague? Yeah. Bouncing up from a colleague's desk as he returned to the work at hand. The rough-looking wizard held Dakota in his gaze for a few seconds. Before Dakota could even say anything, his boss would adjust his outer coat's lapels and wave Dakota forward towards his desk. The desk was of an antique design, complete with a lantern and a set of baubles. Dakota would only think of as being wizard trinkets. The dark wooden desk dwarfed the slender nature of the wizard as he pulled a chair from the side of the room with a wave of his hand. The dark brown chair hovered before setting itself beside Dakota. Please, sit. Dakota listened without a moment's hesitation. As he carefully sat down, he knew better than to keep this wizard waiting any more than he had. Judge's intervention or not, he was late. Now, I know you already had an eventful day, so I won't be dabbling on too much. But do know I'm still making you work later to make up for how much you made me. Wizard smiled. That was a good sign. As well as informing you that you are behind on your other quotas for your duties. You gotta step up the heroism and not just be a detective. You're more than a one-trick pony here. Dakota would disagree there, but it was part of his duties here. The wizard kept his eyes locked on Dakota as he cleared his throat. I heard that Eerie wanted to talk to you. Did she already? Yes? He asked. Dakota went to reply, but a wizard simply held up a hand. Good, don't tell me anything. I got a feeling I know what she said. Dakota blinked before giving a second to think of how to reply. This was not going in the way he thought it would. He expected a reaming. Dakota sat up straighter as he cocked an eyebrow back at his boss. How'd you know? How would you know? I had a feeling. Sir, I'm hesitant about... I'm aware... Where's my battle axe? I don't know. Where did you have your battle axe?
Request confirmed.
Big Jam Bosses, go ahead and promote your idea.
We could do that. I'm trying to think of who would be the best for that, though. Oh, goodness. My back. Oh. Also, guess what? What's up? What's up, chum? Oh. Hey, let's go! Nicely done. Sir, I'm still hesitant about... I'm aware, but know that if I know what she talked about, we are on the same page about what she talked about. I would have finally figured out why he was so aloof and not his normal self. There was a chance that the mole was listening to them. Dakota relaxed a bit in his seat and nodded. Quincy told you I was done with him already? Yeah, he mentioned it. You seem to like your new toys, yes? Tempted though to use my phone after my break. I don't blame you for that. But just be mindful. You're on the clock. Gotta be mindful of that. Yes, sir. They will help me with my duties well. Good. Now that I'm going to be leaving early today, the missus wants to dine out tonight at Reggie's. I've already missed the last time she wanted. I understand, sir. I'll have my board sent in earlier for you then. See to it that you do them well. I don't have time to proofread them today. Yes, sir. Anything else? Do mind that I need you for something else later. Keep your communicator on at all times, though. Yes, sir. With that, the wizard got up from his desk, holding out his hand for a handshake. Dakota got up and shook his boss's hand. That is when he noticed the paper folded inside his palm and took it from the wizard's hand. Dakota nodded and slid his hands into the pockets of his coat before turning around to head out. The wizard nodded and sat back down carefully, as if his old age was finally catching up to him. Dakota knew that feeling all too well. He still was a couple 100 years younger than him. The boss had been overwatching the city for even a longer time than when Quincy was part of the Postman. The wizard had been responsible for many things that happened here in New Albany. As Dakota left the office, he casually walked past the secretary's desk with his hands still in his pockets, still hiding the note in his hands as he made his way out. He didn't stop by any of the dispatch clerks at this time, as he needed to sell the image of him being sent out on an important mission. Admittedly, Dakota always did struggle with how to read the boss's coded message. This time, he got the gist of it. Someone was spying on this postman agency. Someone powerful was trying to keep them from doing their jobs here. Somebody stationed here knew that the Bloodsmith was a vampire lord. Dakota now needed to work alone in solving this. Things seemed still, all too still. Life shifted about as the holes in the ceiling above betrayed how worn down this building was. A figure grunted in the corner as he slowly got up, testing his limbs and working his neck about as bones and joints creaked. He'd have to get out once more soon. Been too long. He had to act now. The sunrise did bother him as he walked over to his makeshift desk. He tugged down the tattered bed material over his body to hide himself from the sun's light as he sat down. He overlooked his notes from the local gang activities and drummed a clawed finger on the desktop, studying the movements that they did, localize a single point of it all. Some of that trading had its uses after all. Reagan sat up more as he took a deep breath, working his mind over so he could follow through his thrall's eyes as he made his way to that spot. A tall building overshadowed by a smaller warehouse, backside of the building. A sign with a label on it had stated where the business was burned into Reagan's eyes. Wagner & Co. Logistics and Handling. That's where I'll strike tonight. I'll give them a most hostile takeover. Himself, still entranced in his thrall's mind. After that, he sighed out and looked elsewhere. He felt his world shift suddenly, and he was in a dark room, talking with an agent on her communicator. She gave out information that the agent sought. He made her look away from the screen, just in time to catch the elevator shut behind Dakota, letting the vampire know his nemesis was leaving the spire. Couldn't see if that mutt had gotten any information worthwhile. Shame. He was hoping to see if there was anything given the postman suspicion to his actions. He broke away from his sorrow's mind, back to his hiding place. He growled softly as he got up, moving over to a barely functioning refrigerator as he grabbed out a bag of blood. He hated that he was reduced to drinking blood in this way for so long. He had to keep himself in check, unless he wished to have a run again before he could figure out how to best her. He could handle that mutt still. After all, Dakota was not able to stop him before, so surely that war dog of the postman won't be able to do so a second time. And if they showed up, they wouldn't be able to stop me anyways, he said, pounding the bag in a vile fashion as his body finally had a full semblance of his former self. Now fully healed and rearmed, Regan chuckled maniacally into that sun's harsh glow. Episode 2! On the Beaten Path. Didn't realize how late it already was. Jeez. Guess I'm not that fast of a reader when reading out loud. Episode 2, On the Beaten Path. Thursday, April 28th, 2699, dawn of first new time. Locale, New Albany, Lower Districts. No one has ever said no to desserts here. Reggie's Tavern, the Pan and Stove's old slogan, before being proven false after someone said no. Dakota eased the Omni vehicle into park as he began to run scans for people in the immediate vicinity of his ride. While he was looking for his informant, the onboard computer hummed softly as its data disks and holotapes began to whir about cycling through the postman's database for anyone who had a known post out for their capture. Their verbiage always annoyed Dakota about how the system's tags and flagged people for all sorts of crimes. Petty or not, he felt it a waste of resources to have postman agents be able to get active warrants available and activate them for people just trying to survive in this harsher world. Police skills should be handling traffic violence infractions, not a bounty hunter. Growing softly in silence, he decided to let the onboard computer just send him the files. Dakota got out of his ride and stretched. He left his rifle hidden in the car's backseat. Surely he wouldn't be needing that. He began his foot patrol in the lower districts. The city of New Albany was set up like many of the city-states in this country, all of which had followed similar designs that the judges had laid out when mapping the country out of the sudden influx of survivors from the first great cataclysmic war. The War of Wars. First cataclysmic war, the War of World Wars. War that was so damaging, completely ruined an entire continent on the planet, and the fallout of it alone led to all the things the modern age ran by. People had been following what the judges established, for nearly 3,000 years now, some tightly, as if it was a religion from a time before the ending of the eve of the last old time. Everything from rules against certain magics being employed in conflicts, rules on how zoning and building construction would be done, to even what levels of education would be taught and achieved at certain ages. A supremely controlled state, all set up to prevent total annihilation of what remains of the living world. Over the last few hundred years, though, more freedoms were adapted into these rigid, structured rules. New interpretations, along with an act of the judges adhering to newer ideas put forth by governing bodies. A collection of adaptive kings and queens with their partnered senators began to start striving to improve life for all. Some notable ideas of which led to more common use for technologies and magic or research to be established to help keep our people and our world safe. While a small contingent of older, more conservative of these rulers and judges switched to restrict magic to the more well-worthy and educated people of this world. Judges deemed education on how these things worked would lead to a more prosperous and healthier world, as the more people felt equal, the less tension it would breed. And so, the last 700 years had seen a significant rise in many advancements in health and well-being for all. The judges helped maintain a steady flow of education along with more updates to make sure the rules are ever evolving and adapting to the rapidly changing. I should probably actually say Dakota here. As Dakota went off to begin his search for work to do today, Dakota wouldn't hesitate to stop and help civilians in the district, while only being interrupted by his communicator informing him of new bounties being posted or of local police guild activities as he milled about. His duty was to the people first, and he only had to stop a few chases by intercepting the villain or criminals that the police were after when they seemed to be too reckless to just have the chase be let on. Go on for 2. Despite having helped a good amount of people here in this district center, Dakota would be lying if he said he felt like he was doing important work. The whole postman's mind was still clinging onto his main goal, finding Reagan. His main goal was to gather information about any gang activity in the sector, as rumors had been spreading amongst the people of them, not really being all too active. Ooh, 5, that's not good. Ecuador uses the Mexican peso as its currency. I want to say... I wonder what they use them. Not really being all... Okay. His main goal was to gather information about any gang activity in the sector, as rumors have been spreading amongst people of them. Gangs being all too active. Dakota would double check with the police guild members he ran into as well to see if they had knew anything. They had nothing, nor did the civilians have any hints of what Reagan may have been up to or doing, as any information available to him was still unknown or left unanswered. He needed to get this information in soon. They had nothing, nor did the civilians have any idea of what may have been up to or done. Oh, lurk! Alright, see you in a bit, buddy. I'm gonna also join the heist. The main goal was to gather information about any gang activity in the sector, as rumors have been spreading amongst the people. The gang's not really Dakota would double check with the police guild's members he ran into as well and see if they knew anything. They had nothing. Nor did any of the civilians. Did any of the civilians have any hints of what Reagan may have been up to or had or done? So any information available to him was still unknown or left unanswered. Dakota needed to get this needed to get information in soon. Else, he may not be able to deal with Reagan in time before his next attack. Seems things are quiet today. Dakota muttered to himself eventually as he saw most posts in his immediate area for things that didn't really need his direct attention at all. All work for the police guilds to handle. The only one that did catch his eye was that of someone who was a known smuggler of illicit goods from the quarantine zone outside the city. There you are, Dakota smiled and put his communicator back into his overcoat chest pocket as he began his hunt. The smuggler was a half-orc named Gregor, who was rather short and lithe for someone of his heritage. The dark olive green colored half-orc had his black hair typically braided and spun into a bun, along with his half-tusks adorned with small silver caps. The half-orc also augmented, giving the cybernetic eye and the metal armature that raised off his left shoulder like a third arm. He was among the craftiest Dakota ever met, a real savant with nearly anything he touched. The biggest thing, though, for Dakota was that Gregor was also a known regular at the tavern his boss mentioned by name, meaning whatever information Dakota needed today to figure out where Reagan was going to be after, that orc knew somehow. All the same, though, Dakota knew better than to let him figure out a postman was after him. Even with Gregor being an informant, it didn't mean he liked helping the postman. Least of all Dakota. And they had quite an established history. With one of Dakota's earliest missions being to bring him in for questioning. An event that led to a factory being leveled, along with a stock of exosuits destroyed in the process. Gregor was found by a makeshift shop, a commonplace in some of the back alley streets of New Albany's lower districts. The half-orc was haggling with a stocky and larger man, who was animal kindred with a tiger, a race that Dakota was often called, given his wolfen features and being a part of his life now. The larger man was crossing his arms and presumably going on about how his dishes were the finest anyone could find in all the district. Much to the perceived disagreement Gregor had, the two would exchange words as they continued just outside of Dakota's hearing. This was fine for the wolven postman, as it allowed him to close the distance between him and the shop. The Tigerkin man noticed Dakota approaching, but only held up a hand for him to wait his turn, as Gregor continued bickering about the chicken meal he was trying to procure for a lower than normal price. It's not fresh temp anymore. I should get a discount for that. It's not fresh. My sale prices are final. It is a fair price for freshly prepared meat. I slaved over this chicken, roasting it to perfection. Price is 10 credits per 3 chicken breasts. You have 6, that's at least 20. Highway robber. Fine. Gregor finally caved as he reached into his satchel with his third. The robotic limb hurriedly pulled out a small leather brown wallet that handed it off to Gregor and waiting for you. The half-orc retrieved his currency card and passed it to the street chef, sighing in frustration before acknowledging the person next line. Can you believe this? I feel like I'm being taken over for brokey. Only slightly, Dakota replied as he clasped a hand down hard onto Gregor's shoulder, as he quickly latched a cuff onto his third arm, remaining free hand before the orc could even react. I'll let you eat, old friend, but I got some questions I'll need to be asking you, he said before nodding to the chef to finish giving Gregor his card back and his meal. Oh, and if I could get a 3-piece as well. Dakota sat across from Gregor as they both ate their chicken meals in relative silence. The half-orc, the half-orc would constantly be testing the restraining latch on his leg as Dakota would wait for him to answer him. Dakota then gently placed a wrapped, flat object onto the table next to a chicken meal and spun it around a bit, letting Gregor know he was really looking to just talk with him, nothing more. I know you asked when you had your mouth full, but can you still tell me how you are? Or rather, you haul me off to jail. That seems harsh. It's been a few months. Why can't we catch up? Ed asked with a smirk, fidgeting even more with the wrapped item as Gregor studied it with his mechanical eye. Because catching up with a postman these days is bad for my reputation, Gregor snorted with a bemused smirk, or quickly downing more meat. Reputation? You back to smuggling already? Nah, I gone straight. You know this. You know this. I sell legal, holistic, genuine goods. Sure, and you keep in the highest circles too yet, right? I swear on me mum. Right, so you're currently up to date with all the street goings to avoid trouble. Dakota applied more pressure in his question, letting Gregor know he could care less about the half-orc's doings and wanted to know what was going on in the here and now. Exactly, capital T trouble. Gregor chuckled softly. I ain't been doing no peddling for no one. So you can tell me what's going on with the gangs here, right? Gregor knew a trick question when he saw one. He hemmed and hawed about it before shoving another bitten chicken into his mouth. This wasn't one. He chewed on it noisily to try and make his friend annoyed. He could have watched him and waited for his reply, knowing it may be a minute. The werewolf worked over a piece of chicken himself before he looked about. Dakota was keeping an eye out for anyone who'd wish Gregor harm just for talking to him. As it meant they might have been affiliated with a gang in the area that was keeping track of his. The gangs here were the postman's top priority list, obviously. But with everything else the postman will do, they often seem to be ignored and pushed away when a villain shown up or a monster was ravaging through the cities. All of which would just make for police guilds to end up handling the gangs, while the postman continued to focus in on dealings with larger threats. It did create a level of tension, though, as often it seemed each police guild only acted as arbiters between these gangs and kept smaller upstart gangs from lashing out and causing massive damage to the city. That left the larger gangs to be taken down by the postman eventually. To date, Dakota could only recall 2 other gangs that ever tried to make a foothold here in this part of New Albany. The Postman Guild knew of the active gangs. Sorry. Postman Guild knew of active gangs in each stricture of the city where they were based in. The Stecture section was home to 2 gangs, Purple Hand and the Red Veins. These gangs had heritages that tied back to the older times. Times well before Dakota had started his work as a postman. His old mentor, Ronnie, was an ex-member of the Red Veins. He made sure to steer any of his charges away from them as he taught them various ways to defend themselves. Dakota knew of them the most, but he doubted they would be the ones who really cause any trouble. They tended to be by the book. These things. I have the wrong name here. He should steer his charges away from them as taught various ways to defend themselves. Dakota knew of them the most, but he doubted they would be the ones that caused him real trouble. They tend to be by the books as possible when doing real white-collared criminals. You know, I hear the gangs are preparing for something. Not sure what, though. They've been keeping to themselves, as I ain't seen them about, Gregor caved finally, bringing Dakota's attention back to him. Yeah, sounds an awful lot like you know something. Oh, I know that they ain't out today, or for this week for that matter. Why'd you think I didn't try to run, eh? Because I had you cuffed? Nah, I'll let you. Right, Dakota did quite enjoy this informant, despite all their history. Anyways, I figured if you being this patient with me, I'm gonna return the favor and maybe get you off my back for a bit. Quid pro quo, as them elite types say. There was a smirk on Gregor's mouth as he leaned back. I know that they fearing or something, but my guess is they're preparing for a takeover. Rumor is some bigwig in the higher districts is making moves to come get business down here. Go to lean in on his chair more, setting his unfinished order of chicken down as he got ready to take it out. Yeah? It's odd, ain't it? I don't ever heard of leaders trying to get up there to make more legitimate deals with their businesses down here. Yeah, that's my thinking. The only person in the high districts I know who makes deals with people down here is ballsy enough. People down here that is ballsy enough to that is a guy that goes by the name Trueleaf. He's one of them high elf purebreds, weirdos they are, Gregor continued as he worked the last bit of chicken into his mouth. Dakota sat there on that. He knew of a few pure-blooded high elves in the upper districts, but that didn't really narrow it down. Purebloods were a group of people that Dakota was always hesitant around, given their distaste for anyone not pure-blooded. Granted, even though those groups' names called themselves pure-blooded, a lot of them tended to be mixed descendancies, tended to be of mixed descendancies anyways. While some were in fact pure-blooded in nature, the purebloods as a political movement had many connections in the monarchies and congressional bodies here in this world, with even smaller, divided groups fought for liberties and fairness for all. A lot of them hosted many charities and fundraisers to keep the lower districts together from falling into crime and despair. So naturally, given this information, Dakota was not surprised that someone from the high districts would want to stoop down to this district to get more directly involved. He was surprised, though, that it was through one of the gangs here, not through one of the many guilds established here to help the people of the city, as they typically tended to do. So, anything else you got? Anything else about him you want to tell me? He's a gambler, a real high roller. Goes to the casino Violet Rose at the end of the civilian district, between there and the manufacturing sector. This is restraint skin, showing Dakota he was about it. Have anything else you can give him? Because his restraint skin. Alright. At the end of the civilian district, between there and the manufacturing sector, he should actually probably be this. Between there and the manufacturing sector, at the aqueducts. Gregor tested his restraint skin, showing Dakota that he was about out of anything more he could give. He might be trying to take the Purple Hands over. They own that casino. Allegedly, in both regards. There was a noticeable pause in Gregor as he tried to recall who that elf was or what other businesses he ran. Dakota would lean in as the silence from Gregor was starting to get to him. He runs a privately owned library complex up in the education sector. Real popular. It's near the Silver Scale College. Thanks for your help, but that isn't who I'm looking for. Ah, figured as much. I still get something for my troubles, yeah? Gregor asked, eyeing that wrapped object near Dakota's hand. The half-arched armature twitched as it snapped its claws hinges together. Does the name the Bloodsmith bring up anything? What, the Bloodsmith? What kind of name is that? Gregor snorted as he thought for a second. Nah, ain't heard him, but tell you what, if I do, you'll be the last guy I ask him. Be the last guy I ask about. You know what he did, right? Was he that vampire lord? Yes. Never mind. If I hear about him, I'll definitely give you a call, Gregor said with a solemn nod. He lost a good amount of people that day. Dakota was silent for a moment, remembering that failure. He clenched his hands and flexed out his fingers for a spell before nodding. We'll get that monster yet. Keep me posted on that hotline if you hear anything. I'll make sure. Oh dear. Ow! That's a grenade. I'll make sure they compensate you for your troubles. Like you are today, yeah? Dakota smiled and helped Gregor out of his bindings before tossing him that wrapped object. Gregor quickly unwrapped and saw it was a flat slab of silver. Yeah, this should help you out. Dakota said yeah, this should help you out, Dakota said smugly before leaving the informant to gawk over the silver plate. Oh, man. We might not get through chapter 3 tonight. Taking Gregor's information, Dakota would decide to act with what he had available to him and to make his way back to his ride, mulling over the kind of person Trueleaf was. Once there, he noticed his ride had gathered a small crowd. A small group of children were busy gawking over the car. They all clamored and looked over the view, each one wondering who it belonged to and calling dibs on it as if it was free for the taking. Dakota took the scene in with a soft smile before chuckling quietly. They didn't hear him approach as then he softly cleared his throat. Pretty cool, right? Despite his nature as a governmental bounty hunter, people in these parts still look to them as heroes, especially the youngest of kids. Most postmen came from the lower districts as they themselves were trying to better the lives of people that they cared for by being heroes. Dakota waited for them to turn around before saying anything more. The first of the kids turned around with a gasp and pointed at Dakota. See? I told you he was a postman. He started to clamor louder and came up to Dakota, asking him questions about what he was doing and if he had beaten up any criminals. After a few moments, they were reminded that the people in the city still supported and hoped for the best. Dakota was finally able to get into his onboard. He checked over the systems that he had fed the onboard, as he then fed the onboard computer info the informant gave him. The onboard computer whirred and whined as it began its task looking through everything to figure out what they could find in the postman's database about the gangs, the name Trueleaf really had, and if there was any validity to what Gregor told him. The Wolfen postman worked the vehicle out of its parking space as he guided the Omni vehicle towards the sky, flying off of the surface streets and heading back to where he'd meet his next objective. Meet Trueleaf and figure out what he might be up to. The hauling ride was spent in relative silence as Dakota multitasked with his hunt along with checking in on what information his computer told him about everything Gregor gave him. He chuckled to himself as he read over everything. That half-orc wasn't half bad after all. Everything he told Dakota was bringing up hits in the postman database servers. Pending posts, wanted bounties, unclaimed mission, high-priority targets. The works. Dakota often wondered if they should hire some of their informants in as full-time workers to help keep tabs on wanted targets. Dakota knew that was a fool's errand to hire ex-criminals as informants, as that could lead to them leaking out information as well. There would be no way to keep moles out if the people were taking money both ways. Shame, but people of this world needed money. Things were constantly costing increasingly more. Regardless of what the kings and queens did to help stem the losses, along with whatever the senators did to help fund public relief aid. Politics, though, was not Dakota's strong suit. Doing his job, saving the day, etc. was. Postman ran a hand through his head of hair as he listened to the onboard computer about True as he drove back towards Silverscale. He wouldn't be able to catch Emily in time for her lunch, as he would stopping at the nearby library study hall called Wooden Alcove, ran by the pureblood high elf Alray Revargan. Revargan. That's how he said it. Alray Revargan. Wooden Alcove was one of the foremost sought-after indexes of magical information available to them. As long as they could afford the library's products, anyone could come in and rent holotapes, books, data discs, old tomes on magic sanctioned and approved by the judges for safe public uses. There was a section there of educational material that was exclusive to the students of Silverscale for a mildly discounted price. Dakota often groaned when he'd see the bill he'd have to help fill for Emily's rentals as they were seemingly higher in price day after day. Figured this guy would gamble with all this extra money. But muttered to himself as he looked over the report in Alaray. Reported about how he may have been one of the founders of Silverscale all those years. You set yourself up quite a deal here. Could have read through sheet as there's no mention of there's also a mention of the Iron Iron classed family as well. Hey, there be my dragons to go aside as he knew. He'd have to be very careful going forward. There are many things a postman would do. Getting into legal trouble with a dragon, especially a dragon as well, if the Iron class, not one of those things. Dakota hoped his encounter would only be him and this true leaf, as he had no intention of dealing with some old ordinary dragon tonight. Dragons, as powerful as they were, only seemed to gain true understanding of themselves and their sentience in older ages. Dragons that were barely in their hundreds often were such a beast of rage and wanton greed that the postman would have to go in and capture them to keep them from leveling a city block. In extreme measures and their existence. Families of dragons stretched throughout the millennium, as they not helped fund the majority of this new world, but also some are also the main backbone of the Judge's might. The Iron class was one of those founding families. Dragons may as well rule the earth in earnest, yet Dakota knew better. There were far more powerful beings in the Judge's ranks that would easily keep any dragon head of family in check. The last of the report came up with nothing new. No mention of business partners, no mention of current crimes, nothing Dakota could use as leverage against the outlay. Alright, old-fashioned talking it is then. Old-fashioned talking, could have thought. The wolfen postman soon found himself outside the wooden alcove. The building had a small cluster of trees that helped obscure the building from the parking lot. Dakota parked the Omni vehicle and shut it off as he kept his patrol gear on him. He made his way up the nearly empty lot. From the nearly empty lot and checked idly over his watch before entering the library's main doors. The doors parted automatically as Dakota paused briefly in their room. The library was massive, nearly the size of one of the smaller buildings on the Silver Scales campus grounds. Still as extravagant as one of those buildings do. Styled in the same architecture as well. The only thing different in comparison was the new feature Dakota wasn't privy to: autonomous guards. Dakota cursed under his breath. If needed more launch to know that Alray may be up to no good. This might be it. The guards halted Dakota as the first one approached with a careful gait. Halt! Due to regulations in New Albany, on these grounds, we must ask you surrender your firearms and implements of war. We understand your status and rank as postman agent, but you must comply with these rules. There was a pause as the robot took a few minutes to figure out which agent of the postman they were addressing. Dakota figured it might be linked to Alray's office, so the elf could see who was stopping by for an unplanned visit. Unless you have proof of a warrant for your trip today, Agent Dakota, the robotic security guard, pointed at a sign near the main desk that showed a storage locker directly behind it. This wooden alcove was not a place to have its peace interrupted. Alright then. Oh, I'll comply. Is Alray in? I asked, letting the robot guard lead into the place locker for storing his equipment. Yes, Alray is in. He stated he is not going to be having any meetings today. Girl replied in a simple, cold voice, ensuring Dakota that this machine was simply here for security and no other purpose. Oh, may I have a chance to talk to them? No. There's a brief pause as the robot's eyes cycled through different colors. Yes. In fact, he just instructed us to escort you to him, regardless of his prior request for no meetings. Did he? Before Dakota could even continue with his question, 5 security units formed around Dakota and kept him completely surrounded. Yes he did then, Dakota said with a soft, annoyed growl, as he was escorted swiftly to the upper floor. The one he had been talking with, returned to its post in the main lobby. Dakota would prefer not to be accompanied by a security team his entire time here, as it would have allowed him to take a longer look at the wooden alcove. All the wooden alcove had to offer and let Dakota see if there was anything else. So far, nothing seemed out of place from what he could tell from the quick glances he could steal while its escort kept him surrounded. Even armed, though, the metal golems were not equipped with substantial weaponry, just mostly non-lethal equipment. Stun batons, lasers, magical neutralizers, all like the energy-based suppressionists. The gear was stored in their bodies, all within quick reach for them to deploy should the need arise. In a pinch, all things Dakota could overpower with minimum difficulty. The only thing that would be an issue for him was physically overpowering the robots themselves, as even with his insane strength and speed, they would not relent should push come to shove. A little more than a simple gesture, Dakota placed his gear in a special locker and followed his escort. It needs to be elsewhere. We'll prepare a message to be sent off to H headquarters for them to get a warrant. But with his boss's warning from before, he knew he needed to keep his actions widely. I don't normally prepare a message to send off to headquarters for them to get a warrant ready. But with his boss's warning from before, he knew he needed to keep his actions wide open, just in case a mole was actively looking into what he was doing. The walk was quiet, letting Dakota take in all the splendor of the wooden alcove's bounty of knowledge uninterrupted. The halls were massive, lined with racks and racks of educational material, only split apart by either a large table with private slides to keep student focus, or by booths with holotape players set up to allow students and other patrons to watch his educational material. The other thing to note was a small study area for students at peace with study. Thankfully, though, for Dakota, he got here just as the majority of students would be out for lunch or in classes, leaving him mostly alone with the security robots as they marched through the main hall towards the back of the building. The place was designed to be as simple as possible, form over function, as it was essentially just a massive, privately owned study hall and library. You could have wondered how many times his sister had been in this building with his escort halted. The two in front of him turned about silently and looked over Dakota. Valerie would like to know why you're here, they asked in unison. The robot's voice melded as it spoke seemingly. The robots. Voices melded as it spoke, seemingly as if it wasn't them asking. Dakota picked on it instantly and spoke. Well, Valerie, if it's all the same to you, I'd like to say what we're talking about in private and in person after we meet. Dakota would continue to hold the gaze of the robots as the other three moved behind him. Dakota didn't like how this was feeling as he waited for one of them to make a move. Ah, I see you're familiar with these robots then, the one on the left said, as the right turned away and faced the wall. So it'd be kind of turn around as they work the unlocking mechanism to my office here. Correct? Elf's voice sounded almost like a threat as Dakota sighed out softly. Yes, of course, no need for anything getting out. Dakota then turned about to find a bag slipped over his head. Panic briefly coursed through his veins. His bag did give him a shock. Was Ellery about to kidnap him? As if knowing what Dakota was thinking, Ellery's voice came through one of the robots and reassured him that everything is fine. Standard protocol for these kinds of visits, I'm afraid, as I'm sure you know of my other name now, Ellery said with a soft whoosh was all else Dakota felt before the bag was removed and he was standing in the middle of the dimly lit office, overlooking the main hall of the wooden alcove. Displacement magic, Dakota said as he blinked his eyes to adjust to the sudden change of lighting. Yes, I wanted to make sure certain meetings were very private, Ellery said, sitting on the other side of the room. His face, slightly obscured from the sight, slightly obfuscated from the sight. His face was slightly obfuscated from sight as the dim light of the office kept things more private. He held a hand at the motion Dakota to have a seat. Please sit, we can talk business if you like. Gladly. Any other magic I should be aware of? Dakota asked, not wanting to sound threatening, but also not wanting to be surprised by anything else. Besides the mood lighting, Ellery chuckled. The lights brightened in the office, revealing the hoard of articles, trophies, photos, and holo recordings that lined all the office walls to show Ellery's accomplishments to his visitors. There were even classic pieces of art hung on over the walls as well. Some sold. Dakota wondered if they were the original pieces of art. Kind of bragging here a bit, aren't you? Dakota rubbed his chin, admiring all. This wasn't the public office Ellery would use for business meetings. This was his personal office. Only enough to show all we can do. Ellery waved a hand, about to enforce the amount of feats he's done. Yeah? Yeah, done. Yeah? Not where your wealth from your gambling habits, not from your wealth came from, where your gambling habits truly. Alfred stifled an annoyed noise before leaning forward a bit more in his chair. The desk made him seem smaller now as he leaned on it before relaxing his. I'll have you know that the gambling you jeer at is what helped fund all this, Dakota. Alray then stood up, coming out from behind the desk as he motioned Dakota forward. Are you here to take me away for gambling? No, but I've heard rumors. Sounds like you might be trying to make a... Sounds like you might be making a business venture down the street. Ah, the public education rumor mill continues to try and frame this as a bad thing. Short-sighted fools, Alray said, for closing the distance between himself and Dakota. Now getting a better look at Alray, Dakota started to see some things that would explain a lot. The pearl-blooded high elf was very fair complexion, nearly albino white, as his bright green eyes studied over Dakota's appearance. The Wolven postman can tell his unkempt nature bothered Trueleaf slightly. Noted. His eyes stared at him deeply as Dakota continued to size up the elf. Alray's sharp-pointed ears flitted a bit as he stood before Dakota. The ears were pointed backwards, as they had long blonde braids trailing down in front of them, showing off his rightfully kempt nature. His long brown hair was done up in a bun at the back of his head. The bun was held fast by a silver and gold set of pins. The elf also had a set of silver and gold Doran glasses with advanced tech lenses, and I'm letting Dakota know it was mostly unaugmented as well, fitting for someone of Alray's nature. The piercing on his eyebrow also let Dakota know he had a thing for fine gems. Alray's outfit was somewhat of an odd choice for someone to wear casually in such an environment. It made Dakota wonder if he was expecting someone else to arrive first, something of notable higher status. The dark blue dress coat came down to his waist, with tails trailing behind him, as if it was a conductor's coat for an opera, but slightly elongated with gold and silver stitching holding each piece of the fabric together. The slacks were of a similar fabric, hemmed in the same material as well. Dakota took note of his wand at his hip and clocked that Alray knew more than he let on, magically speaking. The Wolven postman knew any magic user in such a space would be someone not to mess with. The leather straps holstering allowed were embroidered with small glowing blue gemstones that seemed to be options for whatever spells Alray would cast when needed. Like two opponents in a high-stakes game of chance, they looked each other over for signs of tells. Dakota would have the upper hand here, as he could tell with his heightened senses if Alray was to be lying about it. So he hoped. The elf's heart rate was calm and regular as they stared at each other for a bit longer than either of them had expected. Dakota was one to wear his emotions on his sleeves, but he knew that was his tell. Use that to his advantage. You want to be gambling today. Even if the game was on the house, Alray was in another league entirely. So, Trueleaf spoke first, breaking the silence and adjusting his lapel to reveal a classic pocket watch that ticked on slowly. If we're done gauging ourselves, I think we can talk about my intentions in the lower districts, he said, waving Dakota to once again follow him. The office was larger than Dakota realized at first. As behind, where he was displaced to, had a massive table with maps, miniature buildings, trade routes, and other objects placed on it. Dakota would follow Alray as they went to that table. Dakota, I feel like our time to meet was predetermined, Alray stated, started his sales pitch. I know your history for the most part. Abandoned at use, raised by a wizard on the very same streets I helped create. Dakota glanced towards him with hesitation. If Trueleaf knew everything about Dakota, that would spell danger for his mission. Having a gang that knows his secrets would certainly cause issues for postmen everywhere, along with putting his family at direct. Now, no, I don't know everything. I just know you grew up on these streets at a difficult time. The pause was deliberate there, letting Dakota think about everyone he knew from the streets as well. Like so many still do today. See, the reason why I am so invested here in these districts is because I want to keep people from falling into desperate paths, said, gesturing Dakota's garbs. Here, you can't read. Such paths as becoming a postman. Pause as Alray let that hang in a second. Want less postman? Dakota asked with notable amount of disbelief. I want better citizens that don't develop god complexes, he said before he pointed at the paper from a year ago talking about the bloodsmith being a former postman and the other atrocities that happened that night. None of the world was ready for that back then. Still might not be. Okay. Your bloodsmith was one such citizen too. already cleared his throat, letting his basis show on that. And you plan on doing this by what? Teaming up with the gangs? You say it so simply, said, waving a hand dismissively. Dakota recognized that ring and felt something rise in him briefly, but he pushed it down. That ring was the ring was that of a pureblood. Those rumors were true then about Alray being. Those rumors were true then about Alray being one. Well, only the highest members of the group would have such a ring. It seems like it. But huffed, crossing his arms as he looked over that table once more. Given your history here, it's going to be what? The Purple Hands you're going to team up with? He asked, pointing at to the casino. It was alleged to be their business. Even if the gangs here were criminals, they still ran many other businesses here or district. They seem like your most logical pick. The only other gang here is the Red Veins. Their business ventures seem like something consequence to you. Well, naturally, it'd be smart to take over where I make the most money from. Purple Hand are a savvy set of businessmen. Also know a thing or two about keeping down Alric. Plus, they're the stronger gang, a good set of muscle. And you telling me this now? All now because why? Think I won't talk? Yes, you're here off record, meaning you don't care that I am doing this. Alright, then put out a small data disk with words Dakota couldn't make out on it. Besides, I know that you're after information on the Bloodsmith. Alray had Dakota caught. Dakota wondered if Gregor told Alray this before he got there. I am after him, as he needs to be brought to justice for what he did. Of course, it'd be a shame if your failure was left out to judges know what to the city. Dakota felt his body tense as Alray held his gears. What do you know? I know that I'm not the only one interested in some muscle to get work done. He's after a gang? Can't say, but the Purple Hand is moving like they think he is. They're the ones that started this business partnership in the first place. Coming to me to make their work more, so they're afraid he's coming after them, aren't you? Alray smiled before offering the data disk to Dakota. Now be a good lapdog and find that vampire so I don't have to worry about my business partners being eliminated before I can finish out our deal. I'm no lapdog, you should know that at least. Right. I was told making you angry would make you more honest. Yeah, who told you that? My interns. Alray answered quickly with a slight smirk on his face. Right. Well, best tell your interns to be careful. Interfering with postman work, serious crime. So it's trying to make illegal arrests. He paused, producing a glass of wine from seemingly nowhere and offering postman a glass as well. Agent Dakota, is there anything else you'd like to know? I think we're good here, Dakota said, declining the drink. Well, then if you'd close your eyes, Dakota said as he went for his wand. Dakota was prepared to defend himself, but then he saw the robots were back beside him once more. He begrudgingly closed his eyes as he felt a gust of wind and found himself back over the main desk once more. He asked a robotic guard at the desk for his gear back before he marched out of the wooden alcove, data disk in hand. His next stop, the Violet Rose, the casino owned by the leader of the Purple Hand. I think with that, given what time it is, I think I do need to call it here. So we're going to do that. We'll resume next time we stream with this. So I do want to thank you guys so much for being here. I really do appreciate you guys stopping by as always. Just a couple of housekeeping things before we go. We will be streaming kind of on and off throughout the week. I can't really guarantee what days I will be going live at normally because of work. I'm going to be trying to get some overtime. Yeah, no problem. Thank you guys for being here. We're going to be doing, I believe this weekend, we're going to try to do a building stream where we'll be going to build Ikimu and Skull Grinder, the Gen 2 set with the Mask of Creation. And then also, if time allows, I'll be going over how I built my Takanuva mock that I showed off a while ago. So that'll be what we're doing for Bionicle Day, as I probably won't be able to go live at all on the 10th. If I do, I'll keep you guys posted, obviously, but I'm really looking forward to the 10th, as the Bionicle Day this year is of one of the better story years for Bionicle. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, thank you guys so much for coming and staying here with me today as we read some more of the Arcane Chronicles. I'm honestly surprised at how easy it is to read through this. Um, I do find more things that I can like edit and change, obviously, but we can go over more editing and stuff as we read it more next time. But yeah, other than that, I do hope you all have a good night. Thank you so much for tuning in and all that fun junk. Um, I'll keep you guys posted as what the streaming schedule will look like. Just pay attention to either my Discord or my social media feeds, or just wherever else I post where I'm going live. Y'all have any you want to talk about? Chum, I also need to take note of what you said. So let me make sure I write that down before we go today. My characters should have a answer to everyone but you, Troy. I'm gonna put that in. No. All right. And with that note written down, I will definitely be taking advantage of. Um. Other than that, yeah, that's it for tonight. Thank you guys so much for being here and all that stuff, all that fun, gushy stuff. We'll be going live again maybe tomorrow. I'm not sure yet, but I'll keep you guys posted if we do. I think the next stream we do, though, for sure is going to be finishing reading over Arcane Chronicles stuff, so we can begin the readout, continuing um for parts or chapters 4 through 6. So yeah, thank you guys so much for being here. Hope you all have a good night. I'll catch you guys next time. Take care, everybody. Bye.